Hey, real quick while I've got you, I want to remind you that my final Honest Art Workshop of 2025 is going to be here in Austin, Texas, October 22nd through 26th. And I know the idea of taking a workshop can feel really vulnerable and sometimes a little scary, but it truly is the fastest way to elevate your art. So whether you're a beginner or you've been painting for a while, I can tell you that this workshop will help you elevate your art to that fine art status, and it'll help you find and embrace your voice, your signature in your work. So if this sounds good, don't sleep on it, because the workshop is already half full and it will sell out. So go to the link in the show notes if you would like to join me in Austin in October. Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast. I am your host, Jodie King, and I'm so grateful that you have joined me today. If this is your first time joining us on the podcast, you are in for a treat, because I'm going to talk about a subject that just about every artist I know has done, and that is to paint 1, 2, 3, several canvases, and only for them to turn out terrible. And then what do? We put them in the corner to forever collect dust, or we just think, we're going to get to that, we're going to get back to that, we're going to fix that, and then it just doesn't happen. So on today's podcast, I'm going to give you lots of ideas, 9 in fact, of what you can do with these canvases that have ended up in the Fugly pile. Okay, so if you are ready, let's get messy. Okay, the first one is probably kind of obvious. You may have even done this one, because I know I certainly have. And that is, I don't necessarily want to go back in and try to fix what has clearly not worked. So one thing that I do is I will just literally paint over that sucker. Now, the thing that I like to do when I paint over it, though, is I still like to have some of the original peeking through a little bit, because that can create some surprise and some interest whenever I do finish up whatever that new painting is. But if I had completely painted over it, then I would really be missing a lot of those little sneaky things. Now, I have done this as well. There's another option, is you can paint over it, but paint over it instead of with an opaque, like an opaque gesso or any sort of opaque paint. Instead of doing that, you can use a translucent paint color, or even a transparent paint. And then that will allow what you painted to show through. It'll just not be as prominent as before. So do not sleep on the full ass paint over. All right, second one. And I have seen this done so well. And I always think it's interesting. And I often think, why didn't I think of that? But that is to cut it up. So just literally, you can take it off of the stretcher bars. You can grab a knife. You can get an X-Acto. You can get scissors, whatever works for you. But you can cut up the canvas. And then that begs the question, well, then, what do you do with the cut up canvas? Well, I was actually given a gift from an artist from Art from the Streets. And they cut up canvases from a lot of the different people within the organization, and then they wove it together. So, they just, weaving, right? So that's one thing you can do with it. Another thing that I've seen artists do is they will cut out just like their favorite part of the canvas. So maybe 60% of it they hate, or 70% of it they hate, but there's just like one corner that they like, and they will take that and they'll cut that out, and then you can mount that to board, and just glue it down, and now you've got obviously a small painting, but you've got something at least to show for your work. And then another thing that I've seen people do is they will take that other, parts of that canvas now that they've cut it out, and they will glue it to the front of a journal. So now they've got their very own specific journal. It looks really, really cool like that. You could even do that on lots of different journals and then end up selling those journals. In the same way, I've seen people get old books from thrift stores and things, and you could take that old canvas and you can glue it onto there. I've also seen artists who have cut it up and then they use those pieces for gift tags. They look really, really cool. Okay, another thing you can do, don't laugh, you can light it on fire. I have done this. Believe it or not, it is extremely cathartic, especially if you are painting at a time in your life where you are going through a lot of stress and a lot of frustration. And then on top of that, then we go into the studio to kind of get some of this frustration out and this stress out. And then the damn painting ends up adding to that, turning into, another Fugly, right? So this is when I'm telling you, you can take it off the stretcher bars, but those stretcher bars are wood, and you can put it in a container and you can burn it. Now, for those of you right now that are going, that's toxic, you don't want to breathe in those fumes. Like, I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying it is, and put a mask on, that'll be helpful. I'm just saying that I've done it and it is incredibly cathartic. So don't come for me on that one. Okay. Here's another thing that you can do with those canvases, and that is you can take them and you can create test canvases with them. So what do I mean by that? So if you have this painting that you don't like, right? Enough so that you're going to put it in the corner. Instead of that, if you will just hang it in your studio, or maybe you have a smaller studio and you just need to lean it up against something, you can use that as your test canvas to just like wipe your brush off on it. You can test out some mark making. If you don't want to do it on the painting that you're working on, you can use your test canvas and you can do that. And I have found that when I have used those paintings as test canvases, one day you kind of look up and you look at this, test canvas, you're like, holy crap. That's actually a really cool painting. So imagine if you did that with several of them, it takes all of the pressure off and it ends up being fun. And now you've got a whole new painting. So yeah, you can use it as a test canvas. Okay, here's another thing that you can do. You can use that painting and you can create a mixed media moment with that. So let's say that it's primarily an acrylic painting, or maybe it's watercolor, whatever it might be. But let's just say, for shits and giggles, that it's acrylic. Well, you can keep that, and then you can get all kinds of things. You can get collage materials like magazines. You can put anything on there for like collage materials, but you can go, you know what, this wasn't working out just as like a straight acrylic painting, but what would happen if I started adding all of these items to it? And just that alone, it adds this element of play, like, maybe we used to do before we started taking it all so seriously, using that as just like you're a kid, you're grabbing collage, maybe you're putting on buttons, whatever it might be, but just using that as a play canvas for collage. I've seen the coolest pieces of art that come from that. So, there's so many different things that we can do other than just putting them in the corner. Hey guys, real quick, I want to tell you that one thing I know for sure, that in order for artists to thrive, they need community, they need support, and they need business and creative skills. And that's why I created my membership group called the Honest Art Society. Within the Honest Art Society, I offer coaching calls every month. You get monthly art critiques as well. You get trainings on everything from creative techniques to business skills, and you get exclusive discounts on workshops and courses, but maybe most importantly is you get a community of amazing, kind artists, all in an asshole-free zone. So if you'd love to join us in the Honest Art Society, you can go to the link in the show notes. The cost is only $47 a month, and you can cancel at any time. I'd love to see you there. Another thing that you can do is you could donate them or you could trade them with other artists. So when I say donating them, for us, we may think that we don't like the painting, but if you donated them to organizations that just really needed the canvas, maybe it's a school, maybe it's a nonprofit, whatever it might be, your paintings these organizations can just put gesso over them and they can use them. So donating is always a good idea. The other thing that you could do is you could kind of trade them with other artists because canvases are expensive, right? So if you could, say to another artist friend of yours, like, I've got these canvases, I don't like them, but I guarantee you the other artist will see it through a new lens. And I bet they might think, well, okay, if you don't want it, I can do something with that. So trade them or donate them. Great idea. Okay, next one, and I've done this so many times, it's super fun, is to sand it down. So usually if I've got a painting that's ending up in the Fugly pile, it's already gone through several iterations, right? It's already gone through several layers of paint. So when that happens, I will often just bust out my handy sander. It's a lot easier if you have an electric sander, by the way. If you're trying to do this by hand, it could take a really long time, but a lot of artists do it by hand. But for me, I like to get an electric sander, and then you can sand some of those layers, and then you start seeing the layers that are behind them, and then it kind of gives this new life. In addition to that, a lot of those layers can get really textured. Now, if you want a lot of texture in your work, then that's totally fine. But sometimes the texture can feel like it's a little bit inhibiting as you're trying to create a new piece. So by sanding it, you can take off some of that texture and you get to see some of the layers behind it. Now, one word of caution if you are going to sand a painting, and that is, if this is canvas, you can accidentally sand too much and go all the way through those layers and through the canvas. I've done that. So just be careful how you do that. Just don't press too hard. But I love sanding it back because it's always a surprise. You can't control it, and you never know what you're going to get. That sounded very much like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates, but it's true. You never know what you're going to get. Another idea is you could take that canvas and you could turn it into something functional in your home. So you could take the canvas and you could create like a funky tray with it. You could also just take the canvas itself and you can just totally cover it with fabric, and you could hang it and create like a bulletin board. You could also, if you wanted to maintain the painting and you wanted to create a sort of bulletin board, you could just take strips of ribbon and put it on there, and then you could put like photos and different heirlooms and things in there. And then you could also cut them out and you can mount them to something and create little coasters for your home. How cool would that be? You've got your own little individualized coasters, like they're definitely one of a kind, right? And then lastly, I always recommend, you can just let it sit. But after a certain point, for me, it's usually like around 6 months. If I let a painting sit and I haven't really touched it or haven't wanted to touch it, then that's when I'll likely do some of these other things that I've talked about. But, don't be afraid to just walk away, let it sit for a while. And then sometimes you can pull it back out again and you will see it from like a whole different perspective. Now, if you are like me and you're a little stubborn and you're just thinking, no, I don't want to do any of those things that Jodie just suggested. I want to get out of the fuglies. Yep. I feel you. So if that's you and you want to get out of the fuglies, we will link in the show notes the episode where I talk about all the different ways that you can get out of the fuglies. But if I leave you with nothing else, I just want to say that all of those paintings, don't look at them as failures, right? Look at them as opportunities. You are an artist, which means you are inherently creative. There are all kinds of things that you can do with these paintings that will revive them and give them new life, unless, of course, you decide to burn them like I did. All right. If you have any other comments or suggestions, please put them down in the comments. And if you like what you hear on the Honest Art Podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, it'd be wonderful if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Okay. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other. Peace out.